Hi, I'm Steve Cashdollar. Welcome to No Pressure Prospecting. I always call it the success system that never fails when we're prospecting, if we do it all and if we do it systematically. So I'm going to bring you some behaviors, some attitudes, some techniques today that I think will help you take it up a notch when you're prospecting. And my hope is also that we'll be able to take some of the angst or the anxiety out of prospecting to give you the opportunity to come out of your comfort zone just a bit. Nobody really likes a lot of prospecting. I haven't met anybody. I've met a few sales managers that say they love prospecting, but I don't think they're really actually doing it. They just want their teams to do it. So I might be a little bit out of line there, but it's not the easiest thing. And sometimes we procrastinate prospecting. Do you ever do that? Where we do it when we have time. My number one suggestion today is put it on your calendar, even if it's Tuesday from noon to 1. Don't let anybody interfere with your prospecting time. I've known some people that have had excellent results in selling when prospecting is on their calendar and you can't move them off of it, even if it's 30 minutes or an hour or all day Friday or whatever it is they choose. So break it down into bite-sized pieces so that it's manageable. Get it on your calendar and protect that time just like it's an appointment, because it is. It's a way to, it's your lifeblood, really. So let's do that better. That's my number one tip. And there's a lot of common sense in there. I know for sure. So let's share the screen and we'll get started into the bulk, or at least the meat of our program. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So let's do this, let's do that, and let's start from the beginning. And here we go. So no pressure prospecting. It's really about intriguing your prospect. How would you intrigue? This is my grandson, George. Intriguing is raising the eyebrows. Go ahead and try it. Raise your eyebrows. Do you feel like you're more open when your eyebrows are raised? You feel like you're more willing to listen? Do you feel like something's caught your attention, like a sprinkled chocolate donut? And George has got the right idea. I love that boy. So we're talking about a way to stand out a little bit from the crowd, to stand out from, say, other calls that your prospects might be getting, and to do it a little different. We always say if your competition's doing it, do something different. One of the things through research of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of workshops and working with clients on prospecting is one of the things we do wrong. I hate to start out on a negative. Is there's a thing called a hate crime. You know what that is? Not what you're thinking. Hate, Hayt. How are you today? Now I know we've all done that, and it's sort of our way in our culture. And how are you today? This is Steve at Sandler Training. I just wanted to reach out and see if so you want to be careful about that, because that's a way to tune out a prospect. What do you think if you're in the prospect shoes? Someone calls you and the first thing they say is, hi James, how are you today? Uh-oh. Yeah, that's right. Uh-oh. Sounds like a sales call, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with a sales call, but maybe there's a way to do it to get more of as opposed to frown of the forehead. Try that frown, kind of wrinkle up your eyebrows and your forehead. So that's the way a prospect might react when we execute the hate crime. How are you today? Especially if we do it in this real sugary, friendly, overly friendly voice. Hey, how are you today? How's the weather there in Des Moines? So I'm laughing with you, not at you. So what I want us to think about is, how do we get our eyebrows raised like George does when he gets the chocolate donut? George is he's 3.5, moving towards 4. And he's got the idea. He's got some opinions too, I have to say. That's George. So here's sort of tip number 2 as we sort of get into these ideas to help maybe change your mindset about prospecting just a little bit, your attitude, your behavior, and what you're willing to do in your prospecting to make it systematic, and maybe to automate and to change your thinking just a little bit. So you remember perhaps when you were a kid, I still see these in some stores around the country, a gumball machine where you put in, it looks like a penny, probably a quarter now, but if you put in a change and you twist the dial or pull the lever, a gumball comes out. And I remember when I was young, I was always fearful of getting the black gumball, which was licorice, which I didn't like, and the red gumball was kind of spicy or too sour for me, too hot. I was always looking for a green gumball. I don't know why. So it's the green gumball theory. This is you prospecting. When you make a call or go to a networking meeting or reach out in one fashion or another on Zoom or whatever, you're going to reach out and perhaps you're going to get a red gumball or a black or a blue or a yellow or an orange. And that's not what you want. You're looking for the green gumballs. So all you have control over is what? All I had control over was putting the change in and pulling the lever or twisting the dial. And whatever gumball came out, I might have to keep trying. Maybe I had to put 10 coins in or 20 coins in or 50 coins in. I never did that to get the green gumball. So the green gumball is sort of a way of describing your ideal prospect or a prospect who's interested in what you have to say. So oftentimes we might make, say, 10 calls or something like that, and nobody's interested, or somebody hangs up on me, or I get voicemails, or I get a gatekeeper. I just haven't gotten the green gumball yet. So we can't control what color comes out, not really. But we can control that we keep going until we get the color we want or the ideal prospect. I don't know, in my world, sometimes that's 50 calls. I can take 50 calls to get 15 people on the line to get 7 that might be able to afford me, and then 1 or 2 who might buy. So that's the mindset. So we want to talk about what we have control over, and it's really just our behaviors. Our behavior in this case is setting aside time each day or each week or what you can, block it out on your calendar, and make those outreaches, whether it's phone or Zoom or following LinkedIn or tracking people down, whatever it might be for you, and figure out what works and how many times do I have to call or put a dime in or a penny in or a quarter in to get a green gumball. It takes some of the angst out, doesn't it? So then what is our prospecting starts to become predictable, scalable, doable. Predictable is big with prospecting. We're more apt to do it if we can predict that if we do this, this, and this over a course of history, of course, of time, that's our batting average. I have to do 30 calls to get one or whatever it is. So what's your batting average to get a green gumball? Makes sense, doesn't it? Sort of. I thought so. So here's something we studied in 2020 when we were all trying to adjust and pivot and figure out how to work, maybe how to even keep our businesses alive. Face-to-face selling went way down. Our research showed down 78%. And emails, we relied so much on emailing, and we all know kind of what happens there, and we all know the competition there. Virtual meetings skyrocketed. It says up 3,000% on the screen if you can see it. I suspect that now our buyers are becoming overwhelmed with virtual meetings, don't you? Maybe there's something else we can do to stand out from the crowd. So our world changed. It changed drastically. So, but we all need new revenue. We all need new prospects, and we all need new referrals or introductions. So let's regroup on that for a second. So here's some interesting research. Salesforce does a lot of research on sales and why people buy and the psychology of buyers and the communication efforts. I thought it was interesting to see that such a huge percentage of customers were really unsatisfied with the first contact, the first conversation. So sometimes the first conversation is pushing in. Do you ever push in, try to get a sales pitch in on that first call? One of the things we recommend is, here's tip number 3. Number 3 is to try not to sell on that first call. If you get somebody on the phone, you're tempted to try to take it all the way because you finally got a live body, but the temptation is maybe misguided. So we teach one thing. Your goal on a cold or prospecting reach out or call is to sell a conversation, and the conversation could be later, probably is, when they're expecting your call, when you've put it together and you've set a time, and it'll give you enough time to ask questions and tell your story and hear their story, and to do it with empathy and thoughtfulness, and to become a trusted advisor in whatever arena. That's a lot. That's a lot, but is that a change in the way you prospect it? I bet it is, maybe not. So buyers describe the sales process painful, uncertain, sometimes even stressful. So how do we do? I always say it's our job to build a relationship. It's our job to take the pressure out of the balloon. Shh, shh, shh. Picture when you're calling someone out of the blue. They're not expecting your call. They may not even really want to talk to you. It's like a balloon, and it's kind of pressurized. They're not super comfortable. You might be a little uncomfortable. That all adds to a lot of angst. So I'm going to talk about how do we bring that down, and how do we sound and act and be different than all the other people out there that are making those outreaches or those calls or emails and so forth. And I always know too that we want to think about how we're coming across. What kind of clues are we giving when that person does pick up or answers the phone or reads our emails? What kind of clues? By that I mean, how are we coming across in the first, say, 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds? Other research, by the way, shows that people start to decide whether they're going to talk to you, do business with you, have any interest, or raise their eyebrows at all. They do it in the first 60 seconds. Now, the problem with that is you're reaching people oftentimes when they're doing something else. Were they expecting your call? Probably not. And then it wouldn't be probably a prospecting call, would it? Was their mind on something else? Yeah. Is it an interruption? Could be. So how do we soften that? Here's one of the ways we do it. I might say it like this. In the training business that I'm in and the way I sell and market my product, I would call and say, "Hi, George, this is Steve Cashdollar. I don't know whether you and I should talk. Would it be okay if I took 60 seconds to tell you why I reached out?" I get about 90% yeses to that question. Then I'll take a breath and say, my company's Sandler Training. We coach, teach, train salespeople, and I want to tell you why people are reaching out to us now, and see if we should keep talking. Fair? Okay. I get a big percentage of fairs there too. So there's actually 3 or 4, George, and I'll do them as quick as I can. Number one is they need more opportunities, and they need to do a better job with those sales opportunities. Number 2 is they need more relationship building kinds of connections in their pipeline with qualified people. Number 3, I get this all the time where there's concern about discounting. And I just heard from a vice president of sales the other day, says, "Steve, we've got a premium product, but my guys love to discount. They think they have to discount. We've got to stop that." And then one more bonus is I get this from CEOs all the time. "We cannot miss our sales targets this year, Steve. Last year we did from time to time miss some of our targets. I want to make sure my team has the skills, the abilities, the tools, the techniques to do it better this year. Can you help me?" So that's a lot. I don't know if any of this catches you, George, but do you think a conversation might be relevant or in our future? So that's kind of off the cuff how I would be different than the average bear, and maybe that connects with you. So what I did at first was, hi George, I'm Steve. I don't know whether you and I should talk. I don't even know whether I could help you. I'm calling to reach out for a little help. So it's breaking the pattern from what the prospective buyer was thinking and trying to intrigue, and perhaps raising an eyebrow like, this is different, or this guy seems to know my business. He seems to know the pain points that I'm worried about. And most of those pain points, when you're calling a client, what are the things they worry about the most? And you have to know that, at least to intrigue a little bit. So you're building some trust right out of the gate that you're not like the average bear, and you do kind of understand their red widget business, or in my case, the training of salespeople. Make sense? Whew. Take a break. So part of it is, how do we ease that angst? How do we take some of the pressure out of the balloon? Shh, shh, shh. And how do we raise an eyebrow or two? So one of the things we teach is to try to mirror and match a little bit. So if I've got somebody that's kind of a high D kind of driver, entrepreneur, kind of wants to take charge, I got to pick up my pace a little bit. I may not want to talk about my vacation to Hilton Head, but if I'm talking to a person that's more friendly, more outgoing, more welcoming, and I find out we both went to Hilton Head or whatever, we could probably take a minute with that. So let's figure out who we're talking to. Are they faster or slower speaking? Can you adjust to that? Are they more process oriented or more people oriented? And could we adjust to that a little bit? Those are the key things we look for when we teach the ability to help put the prospect at ease. People like to buy from people that are like them. And not to manipulate, but you can show that you are a little bit like them in your manner, your communication style, how you prefer to talk and teach and even sell. The University of Pennsylvania did a lot of studies. You see it on the screen, the Wharton School, one of the highest regarded schools probably in the world, for sure in the country. And, you know, the old adage or the old maybe image of salespeople being flashy and fast talkers and real smooth and slick and so on, you know, that might have worked in 1940. I don't think so, but even 1960. But today people are what? Are they more skeptical? Are buyers more skeptical? Yeah, they know more. Are they less trusting? Possibly. And are they smarter? Yeah, probably. They probably have more knowledge about you and your product than they had in the past because it's out there. So there's those things. So we're better off being a trusted advisor than we are being a salesperson who uses all the right words in all the right order at the right time. Trusted advisor would be my suggestion for us. So don't let how you communicate get in the way. By that, I mean this. Sometimes I'll teach salespeople and I'll be teaching maybe a little different approach. And a salesperson might raise their hand in the back of the room and he might say, hey, Steve, I am who I am. This is the way I do it. You know, I have no interest in making a big change in my personality. It's kind of what they're saying. And we're not talking about that. But we're also not talking about bulldozing through like you do a sales presentation to everybody, because that's who you are. And maybe the person on the other line doesn't appreciate bulldozing. That makes sense, doesn't it? So we're just talking about adjusting and tuning in. The best communicators are what? The best listeners. So we want to talk about that a little bit. You can ask questions on a prospecting call. And here's why. I guess it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. We call it the 70-30 rule. In a sales situation, the prospect ought to be doing 70% of the talking. You ought to be doing 30%, the 70-30 rule. Here's something worth writing down if you haven't taken a note yet. You will display your competence, your professionalism. You'll display how good you are by the questions you ask, not by the silver-tongued oratory that you might be tempted to to toss out there. Does that make sense? The questions you ask are what show that you're tuned in, you're showing empathy, you're listening, and you want to know more. Because you don't know whether you can solve the problem yet. You just don't. Not really. Okay? So if you're taking notes, here's a good one to write. I'll let you read it. If you're listening only today or you're driving along in your car, say the bottom line is it's your responsibility as a sales pro to do your pre-call plan, to know who you're calling, to have done a little homework. Maybe you looked them up, you researched your prospects, and you've adapted to them what you know about them, what you know about their needs, what you know about their world. Tall order, right? The bottom line. So let's do this. In our live sessions, we just came back from a breakout session where people talked about identifying and attracting their ideal clients. So prospecting, we could focus on the green gumball. Remember that story? So where do we find green gumballs? What are they thinking? Who are they? Where are they? What's their world like? So think about, rather than say, I'm just going to call 10 people out of the Chamber of Commerce list. I've done that. I've built some businesses doing that, but I think I could have been a little smarter. So why didn't I say, who do I best serve? Maybe for me, it's mid-sized businesses who are entrepreneurial, open to ideas, and know they need to improve their sales results with maybe seven salespeople or more. That's who I best serve. And what are they currently doing? Right now, they're just winging it. They don't have a process to sell by. Their salespeople don't know how many people they have to call to get an appointment. They don't know how many appointments they have to run to get an interest. They don't know how many people they need interested to close a sale. So they don't know what their batting average is. So they're winging it. They don't know what their batting average is. And everybody's doing a little something different. And the CEO or the sales manager or VP of sales doesn't really know what they're saying out there. Doesn't know. Sounds a little risky, doesn't it? So they're like a football team that just takes the field and huddles up and says, what do you guys want to do? And maybe not that bad. And then, what are their pain indicators? I gave you 3 of mine, or 4 in my little role play earlier. So what are the pains or the needs or the things that your best targeted customer experiences? Remember, my customers, where they need more prospects, they need to do a better job with their prospects. They need to keep more good conversations going in their pipeline with qualified people. What was the other one? Oh, they got to quit cutting price just because the customer is pushing them because they have a premium product. And the last one was, we can't miss targets this year because we did last year, and we cannot. We got to get better. So, those were pain indicators that could resonate with one of my potential buyers in the business of selling and producing training. And there are there trigger events. And give you an example of a trigger event. Maybe this is a trigger event. One of my clients in the Northeast sells software that's a communication software, like a FedEx. If there's a serious issue at a FedEx terminal, their software alerts everybody, all the trucks, or where they need to go, or how they need to stay safe. Those kinds of things with all kinds of companies. Emergency communication software. So trigger events for them is perhaps when one of their clients has an issue. Could be when something's changing in the world. Could be a hurricane coming through. Trigger events where they need to be able to be at their best. That's sort of an example of a trigger event. But what would be trigger events for your clients? Think about that. Where are they thinking? Where are they put on the spot? Where do they need change or improvement? So wouldn't those be the kind of people, if there's a trigger event and you know it, that you could reach out to before and understand their trigger events? Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, so let's slow it down here a little, Steve. Let's do this. Most of my clients like this approach. I've hardly ever had somebody say, I ain't doing that. But I get that sometimes on other tips, but not this one. So before you say I ain't doing that, this is the CARE system for prospecting. The green, if you're watching, the green button or block is to how do we keep a customer that we've already got. I'll give you an example of something. In 2020, I was worried about losing all my clients. So what I figured out was, what do I need to do to keep them going? In some cases, we kept teaching and didn't bill or invoice until they got back on their feet. Yeah, well, but in most cases, we doubled down. We started doing more, and sometimes for the same price. So you might say, well, that'll put you out of business. But actually, it kept us in business. And most of those customers will never forget what we did to help them. So doubling down, and it's not always about doubling down, but to say, what can I do to do more, to service better, to offer more, to provide something different, better, faster, meaner, leaner, greener, to keep the customers I have that are happy. And if I need to find out and to make sure they're happy, I want to ask them, how are we doing? What are some things we could be doing that you wish we were doing? So that's part of keeping a current customer, which is easier in most cases than prospecting for a brand new one, right? And then the orange is attain, going out and getting brand new, which is what we're talking about a lot today. But I want to talk about the last two. The blue dot, or if you're listening only, it's called recapture. This is like 4 squares: keep, attain, recapture, and expand if you're listening only. So recapture is to go out and get people that have been lost or quit buying or hiding or ghosting, or you don't know why. Recapture can be something as simple. One of the things we do when we're trying to recapture, we send an email out, say in the subject line, anything changed? And then maybe just 7-word email, wondering if anything's changed or how your world's looking right now. Should we talk? Go back and find out what happened, or why they went away, or what did we miss? And if you can get a conversation, you can ask those questions. You might learn, you probably will, not with all, but with some, how to recapture them. That's good, isn't it? But where I spend most of my time is asking how we can expand. And that's like, okay, look at my customers. Let's say you're working with, I don't know, a hospital, and you're working with HR, and the hospital's happy with you. And 3 times a year, they place an order with you. But in a hospital, how many offices and people and positions are there that have your same need or something similar? So is sales down the hall, or let's say new client development, is community outreach down the hall or upstairs? Have you ever talked to them? Would your buyer introduce you to community relations upstairs? Would they introduce you to HR or to training, or to, how many different offices? I always call it the down the hall syndrome, where I need to know all of those people down the hall, and because they have a need too. So oftentimes we rely on that one person because they're regular and they love us and we're happy with and it's in this thing I call the comfort zone. So to ask for an introduction to somebody down the hall, or I used to in the days when we went out and did things in person, just walk down the hall, and if the door was open, I might just stick my head in the door. Got to worry about security a little bit, but sometimes people would say, "Well, come on in," or I might say, "Can I introduce myself?" And that's a little bit old school, isn't it? Quite a bit. So, but think about ways you can expand where you already are. Additional buyers, additional people. Sometimes it's just being introduced to a vendor of one of your best clients, or a neighbor, or whatever. So pick which of those four: keep, attain, recapture, expand, would you think you'd focus on right now? And if I'm scrambling a little bit to meet my targets or to improve my income this year, I'm going to start with expanding where I already am, keeping them, and then expanding around them in their circle of influence, or what we're going to call from now on down the hall. That makes sense, doesn't it? Even if they're on another coast, sort of down the hall in my book. So appreciate you taking a look at that. The care system, K-A-R-E, keep. How do we keep? What do we need to do to attain new? Should we be recapturing some old people that we haven't, the door was left open, but we're not talking, or we didn't get another order or whatever? Maybe you even proposed something, but it never finished, but you had a decent relationship, no door was slammed. And expand. I love the expand category, you can tell, right? So here's just a few ideas for being on the lookout for new prospects, changes in the customer's realm, job changes, anniversaries, product launches, market news. Do you follow news of your prospects and their industries? This isn't a plug, but we use a program called Zoom Info. Maybe you're familiar. Zoom Info is where we pay to buy research lists. And one of the things they do now in their lists is there's a news category where you can click on it and see what that company or organization has been doing. If it's a bigger company, it'll show maybe their stock that they've issued, or it may show people who have been promoted. It may show a new product. It may show if they've been sued for something, it may show that. So it's almost like a newsreel for that particular company. More with bigger companies, a little less with smaller, but almost all size companies can have a news tab. And you can learn, like, for example, if there's a new CEO, or if somebody's taken over their sales department, and those kinds of things. And that's just one. I don't have a stake in Zoom Info, but I use it. And there's others like that. You can do a lot of that, though, by looking at a person's Facebook, at a company's Facebook, at their LinkedIn. I would always suggest looking at a LinkedIn and a Facebook and the website before you make an outgoing call. Don't take a lot of time on the research, because you don't even know if they're going to answer. But a little bit will help you stand out from the crowd. Like, the worst thing I ever hear is, am I speaking to the right person? Or who makes decisions on blah, blah, blah? Oh, deadly. I think you should try to do some detective work. If you can, when you can, figure that out before you dial or send an email, and include some of your knowledge, a little bit of your knowledge in your reaching out. You've done the research, and much of your competition is not doing research like I'm suggesting. So anybody's eyebrows going up? Do we need to, where's George? There he is. He may not raise my eyebrows all the time, but he sure makes me smile. So I'll try not to be a overwrought grandfather here today. But I did move to the Carolinas about a month before he was born, just to be a part of that boy. So I know some of you have done that kind of thing too. Halfway across the country to hang out with a 3.5-year-old. So you know this. Let's just take a second with this. This prospecting success goes way, way up when we have an introduction. I know that's common sense. So we should talk a little bit about, I like to call them introductions, where we ask a person for an introduction. Here's a tip. Are you taking notes? One of the worst ways to ask for introductions and referrals is to say, hey, who do you know? Or, hey, write down 3 names on this card and I'll go see them. That's kind of 1950 or 62. And it doesn't work very well. Or if you just say, hey, can you give me any referrals? And most people will say what? Gee, Steve, I can't think of anybody right now, but I'll let you know. And they never let me know. They don't even know what you're asking for. What kind of who? Who are you asking about? Where are they? You're asking for my neighbor's name or my brother-in-law's name? No, I'm asking for a green gumball. And I could explain who my green gumball is. Those are the ideal prospects who I help and who I work with, and oftentimes are glad to have a conversation like you and I did, George, back when we first started working with. So I want you to use the word brainstorm. So you might say to your client, Sue, do you mind if could we brainstorm for a minute? I'm wondering who at ABC Widget Company might be interested in an introduction about a conversation like you and I had when we first started. When I say that, who comes to mind? Or when I ask that question, who do you think of? So there's a way to do it to help direct your buyer to who you'd like to talk to. If it's a specific person, that makes it easier. Or if it's an area of people, or if it's a certain position, or if it's other red widget companies or whatever. So you're directing, you're helping, and a third-party story can always work. You know, I talked to my buyer at the yellow widget company, and I was talking about introductions and how it worked so well when I was introduced to HR. You know, you can use a third-party story. Those are very powerful when you can tell like a success story, but you go outside of what you're talking about and go over here and get a story of somebody like your buyer. Maybe it's another HR person or another sales manager or another CEO. Tell a story that they might be able to relate to. And that's when you can ask for an introduction. And then your ability to have some success and improve your closing ratios goes right up through the roof because it's a personal referral, but we're calling them introductions now, new word. Introductions as opposed to referrals, kind of a scary word. So in our live broadcast last week, we did a group discussion here, and I'm going to help you do that individually on our downsized version for you today. We were talking about how have you changed certain things over the last few months based on changes in the world and changes in how our buyers are thinking and what they're up against. So when we're asking for introductions, it's okay for you. It's even advisable for you to bring a name to the table. Where would you get a name? So let's say I'm talking to the CEO of the Red Widget Company, and I go on his LinkedIn, and then I see some names of people that went to school with him at Duke. Sorry about that. I wonder. I see somebody who's also an owner of a green widget manufacturer, and I wonder how close they are. So I could mention that name because I'm a specialist in the widget business, right? So I could say, Mr. Buyer friend, I see that you're friends with so and so. I wonder, how well do you know him? So I mean, we start that conversation. And would an introduction? You think an introduction could be valuable to him? Kind of start a conversation like you and I had when we first started working together. That's what I like to do. That's just my idea. And so that person can help qualify that person. And my red widget guy could say about the green widget guy, he could say, oh, he's a great guy. And I know they're growing, or they're buying a new plant in such and such in Des Moines, and whatever he might know. Wow. Then you've gone up a step or two or three up the ladder, right? And then you can just ask. I could say, Carl, if you don't mind my asking, how comfortable would you be comfortable with an introduction? Not a bad way to do it. That's taking the pressure out of the situation, directing a little bit, guiding, asking for permission, very professional, low key, no obligation, and maybe rehearse the introduction. Hey, would you mind introducing me like this to him? It could give a little bit of a, we used to do that when I was doing public speaking all the time. I would give the introduction to the host of the meeting and I would tell them how to introduce me. If not, I would hear some of the strangest things. So they would sometimes read the card with 3 or 4 lines about my background, and it came across professional, and they said kind of what I wanted them to say, and it wasn't odd or confusing or unprofessional. We could do the same thing when we're asking for an introduction. Say, could you introduce me like this? I'm the president of, or I'm the entrepreneur, or however you would like for them to have that first glimpse of you. Then it makes sense, and it's common sense when you get an introduction and it works or doesn't work, it's good to follow up with both parties, to stay in the loop with both parties in a professional way. It could be, thanks for meeting me if it didn't work out. And if it didn't work out, you could say, John, thanks for introducing me to Carl. He's not really attuned to doing what we want to, what we do right now, but I really appreciate it. And oh, by the way, I invited him to my Rotary Club meeting because I know he's new in town. Just network and communicate and connect more. Be a good connector. Start to raise some eyebrows, right? So let's see, where are we? I hope this is helping you a little bit. Have you taken a note or two? If you're looking for, when you attend a program like this, sometimes one idea is all you need to make a little bit of a change or to tweak your work, make your work a little bit better. And if an idea doesn't strike you and you think, all right, I'm not doing that, just let it go. Just let it fly and then look for the next. You don't have to mentally argue with it too much. You don't have to be right. You might be right, but just let it go. Look for the next idea. Here's a good idea. Here's a sample of a script. You might want to take a screenshot of this if you like it. A referral script could go something like I've written there. I'm going to give you a minute to take a look at it. Since some people are listening only on an airplane or in a car or in the back office at lunch, I'm going to take the liberty of reading it to you, and pardon my intrusion for those that have already read it. I'll do it quick. So a referral script could sound like this. Hey, John, I went on LinkedIn like we talked about and found some names of people that I thought might be, interested in conversations with me, kind of like what you and I had when we first started. But I wonder if I could ask for your help. Would you mind putting our heads together for a second? Sure. So could you, so maybe I have a list of say 7 or 8 names. Could you scratch out any names that you think wouldn't be a good fit for whatever reason? You see anybody on there that you would say, don't do it, Steve? Or if you don't know them, or they don't pay their bills or whatever, should we scratch them out? And then if there's anybody left, could we talk for a minute about why you think they might be interested in a conversation and how we might do an introduction if you're comfortable? I think that's a pretty good script, don't you? And you can put it into your own words. You have to be comfortable with it, or you won't do it. So not Steve's words, but your own words. I think that's a great way. You could do that all day long. Referral script and getting introductions, and maybe you set aside some time each week to do that. Here's a way I've learned to do it. I was taught this by a colleague of mine in Florida, a great guy, a former Navy rescue pilot, helicopter pilot. He said this, Steve, let's say he just got a sale and they just signed paperwork and now they're working together. So you might say something like this: Steve, I want you to enjoy this relationship and be really proud of it. So would it be all right if in a few weeks or down the road, I'll come back to you and I'll ask you about that. And when you tell me what you're happy with and that you're proud of it and you're telling your friends, would it be okay if we had that conversation in a few weeks or a few months? Yes. And then perhaps that'd be the right time to ask you who might be someone I could or should meet that you might be willing to make a friendly introduction. Would that be something we could at least talk about in say 6-7 weeks? So I'm not asking for an introduction the day we sign up. I never felt like I had the guts to do that, but I do have the guts to say, could we talk about this down the road? when you're proud and happy. So that's a little different, isn't it? So I always say if the competition's doing something, let's do something different or better. And I believe this approach will raise an eyebrow. I think you'll get yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. That's a great idea. You will get some of those, I promise. So put it in your own words. I want to make sure you're enjoying the product, and I want you to be proud of it. And I'm hoping that you're telling other people about, how it works for you and the success and so forth. And then could I ask you about it in a few weeks, and then perhaps ask you who else? put it in your own words. So it seems like I do it a little bit differently each time. It doesn't have to be super scripted, although I script it out so I remember what I'm going to do, but then it always comes out a little bit different and hopefully a little bit natural, but more than anything, just authentic. You can stumble with it a little bit. You could say, it's always hard for me to say this, but I wonder if we could talk in about 6 weeks. You can stumble. There's a lot of research these days on vulnerability. Brene Brown writes a lot. I think she was University of Houston. And she's done a lot of studies and speaking. Look up Brene Brown. Watch her TED Talk, her famous TED Talk that helps springboard her speaking and teaching and coaching career. But she's done research on vulnerability and how leaders can use vulnerability, how we as sales professionals can be vulnerable. We can stumble a little bit. When we stumble, people will have a tendency to try to save us, to try to catch us. There's a little human nature in that. So if a referral question or an introduction question or request is a little uncomfortable, you can come clean on that. So, it's always a little uncomfortable for me, but I wonder if I could ask you a kind of a bold question. I like to soften that. It shows I'm a little worried about it and they can be a little worried about it. Then we're building a kind of a neat connection there. Anybody raising their eyebrows? I see a couple. Yeah, I see it. So just be comfortable. We're going to send out in a few days this thing called a pre-call planner tool. And it's something you can think about when you're getting ready to call, especially if it's a major league prospect that you would really like to work with. It's kind of like a who, what, when, where, why, and how questionnaire, kind of pre-qualify the opportunity. What should I say? What are their pain points? What's their disc profile? Are you familiar with this? Are they more direct driver, CEO type, or are they over here still process oriented like a D type would be? We call it a C type, like an engineer or a CPA. Do we need to slow it down? Do we need to focus on the details? Match up with that person. What do they look like? I can look at what they've written. I can look at what they've said on their Facebook page. I can look at how they've communicated or their connections on LinkedIn. I can get a good picture of the profile if I'm willing to do a little bit of pre-call work. That's what, and you'll be more comfortable. The more you know before you call somebody, probably the better it goes. Not always, but most of the time. Wouldn't you agree? Yep. Thank you. When I say be comfortable, hey, Cy, this is my bulldog. I rescued Cy, the bulldog, about 4 years ago. He's going on 8. I don't know how he did that, but he has a way of just getting comfortable wherever he is. He's laying down there beside me, and you might hear him snoring. He's wherever I am. So Cy is an English bulldog. We call him the brown and white snort dog. And sometimes my grandson, he calls him prehistoric snort dog because he heard me say that. He is kind of prehistoric looking. So that's just an idea there to think about, making sure when we're prospecting, when we're selling, when we're influencing, when we're trying to intrigue and raise some eyebrows, that it's just comfortable to us. And it's not Steve's words and it's not some super perfect script, but it's authentic. Authenticity is huge these days. And like I mentioned just a moment ago, some vulnerability there, Cy. I think he got up there and then stretched out and pushed the footstool away. If you're interested, I love that dog. So let's wrap up with a couple of things that are always perplexing, are difficult to know. We know some of this as we leave messages. And as we leave emails, the one thing we see if there's a mistake that causes people to fail with any email projects or email is that we try to do too much. Short sentences, intriguing subject lines, nothing real gimmicky. Sometimes in my email subject lines, I might just say, curious, ? Now that might be a little gimmicky, but I don't want to come across as too salesy either. I want to be as vulnerable and as authentic as I possibly can. But in my email, I might mention one pain indicator. Can I give you an example from in my world? In a 7 or 8 word email, I might say something like, John, most of the CEOs we work with are wanting more sales opportunities, and they want their team to do a better job with those opportunities. Should we set a time to talk? So there's some intrigue. Some might, there might be a frown. There might be a raised eyebrow, like, this is a different approach. So, or I might say, I'm not sure you and I should talk, but like I did with my opening 30-second commercial when we first started this program. I don't want to do too much on my proposition or what we're going to do, but if you do have a unique selling proposition, if you could put it in, say, one line in your email, that's not so bad. And then always follow up. You have to follow up. You have to make a call following an email. You could send 6 or 10 emails, but an email and a call, and then maybe an offer, and then another email, and then a call. Think about what you could do in a 10-step process to stay with a person. This is a prospect that you've identified as ideal for you, and that you're going to, I call them major league prospects. I'm going to keep working on those. So I'm going to have a process. It's not going to be one call and done, is it? So is that helpful? I hope so. Are you taking a note or two? Good. That's good. See how I talk to myself? So you probably have seen this. Have you ever sent an email with maybe 3 paragraphs, and maybe it's something internal, or maybe it's to a customer, and you obviously on their response they read like the first line or 2, and they didn't answer any of the other stuff. That happens to me almost every week, and I've caught myself doing that too, not going too deep. So you got to remember on an email, start treating it, unless it's like some sort of informational thing on how to start, downloading your order forms, or whatever, that's different. But if it's intriguing, trying to get attention, short, because they're not going to read much more than that. It's your customers will say, I get 100 emails a day. I've got customers who say they get thousands of emails a day. A CEO of a corporation may get 1,000, and they're oftentimes somebody's screening those too. They're you don't need this one, and then the CEO or the boss or the founder is getting maybe just the ones that the screener has pulled out for him, and those that are obvious solicitations don't get to the boss. You know that. I know you do. So let's see. We've got here's a script that I picked up. I borrowed this from somebody. Where if you're leaving a message, the message has to be kind of intriguing, or you'll get clipped off after. So no, how are you today? No hate crimes. And when you're leaving a message on voicemail, no sing-songy. Hey, how are you doing? I'm just in the neighborhood. I was just wondering if you wanted to come over to a CR event. Too sugary. Then there's a CEO say, salesperson, click. And you might lose them in the first 3 seconds, 5 seconds. I've done that too, haven't you? Where I delete the message. I don't even know what they're talking about, but I don't like the approach. And I know I haven't asked for this message. So calm, watch your tone, equal business stature. It's business owner to business owner. It's professional to professional. I'll show you what I mean by that. Hi, I'm Steve Cashdollar. I'm reaching out, John, because I noticed that the tone is businesslike. It's a little bit crisp. Watch your diction, be clear, slow it down just a little bit. Oftentimes people will say they get a call and they don't even realize who it is. They didn't hear the name. They didn't catch the company. And we always teach our frontline, like our internal salespeople, to slow those calls down when you're leaving a message or when you're returning a call. Hi, I'm Steve. My company's Sandler Training in Charlotte, North Carolina. Just to be really crisp there. And I like the idea of saying, I work with people who work in your industry, or I work with people in the healthcare industry who are do, and we typically hear do. So a little bit of pain, a little bit of connection that their world, if you do. Now, this last line here I don't like. It says, are you the right person at your company? I think maybe sometimes you have to do that. But I would just say, am I catching you at the right place, right time? Or I might say, or is there someone else on your team that might be, that it might be more important to, or something like that? Is there anybody else? Does this resonate with you, Carl, or somebody else on your team? But perhaps that's the way I would do it. I kind of messed that up a little bit, but I hope you got the idea. Here's another thing we're going to send you. It's a 30-second commercial creator to help you when people say, what do you do again? Or who are you? Or if you're at a networking meeting, I got a feeling those are coming back to our world. Then when somebody says, what do you do, Steve? That in 30 seconds, you can state it and also ask to see if that's something that they're interested in, so that you're really doing a better job with your networking. It's 30-second commercial. We'll do more of that in future programs, but this is a tool can kind of guide you to create. Everyone should have a 10-second commercial, a 30-second commercial, and if you get a little more time, a 60-second commercial. And it's really about introducing yourself, talk about the pain statements that your customers reach out to you for, and how you help them, and maybe a hook. Is that something you want to hear more about? Or would you like to be invited into one of our events? A hook at the end of a commercial is not bad if it's gentle, authentic, empathetic, not pathetic. Here's one of the things that introduces my 30-second commercial. Hi, this is Steve Cashdollar. I don't know if it makes sense to talk. You notice I stumble a little bit there? That's on purpose. Not always, but today it is. Hi, this is Steve Cashdollar. I don't know if it makes sense to talk. My company, Sandler Training, John, we work with successful people, salespeople, teaching, mentoring, coaching, and mostly how to get more sales opportunities and to do a better job with those opportunities. I wonder if I'm catching you at a time when we should think about a conversation. Or I might say, do you mind if I take 60 seconds, tell you why I reached out? Then you can decide if we should keep talking, sort of take the pressure out. That's pretty good, isn't it? I'm so proud of that. Okay. So in our live program, we always say, take a minute here and put together your best 30-second commercial to get your buyer's radar to see if they're interested. Now, here's what I would do. If you already have a commercial that you're used to, or you're using one when you make your calls or introductions to new clients, can you record them? On Zoom, it's easy, isn't it? On a phone call, you can record your side. You don't have to get permission to record your side of the conversation. And sometimes we do record and let people know we're recording, maybe a recording on, and then your outreach calls. So start figuring out a way to record some of your exchanges and how you sound and what's your tone like, and is it a little bit interesting and intriguing? Could it raise an eyebrow or two? If you're not recording some of your exchanges or interchanges with your client, it's like a football team that doesn't record their games. Every football team, the pros at least, watch a video on Mondays, don't they, to see where they missed the block or the tackle, to see what worked? Sales professionals are one of the few professions that don't practice or don't debrief or don't review the game film, because it's awkward. And the first time I recorded something, oh my gosh, who is that squeaky little guy? Or he's talking way too fast, or his diction, he needs to enunciate better, more properly. All those things that how we judge and critique ourselves, but it's about the only way to really improve your results in selling. Stop winging it as much as you might be and start being more strategic, authentically. So here comes George back. So I just want you to think, what am I doing? How could I intrigue? One of the best ways when I'm starting a conversation, especially on the phone or Zoom or maybe even an email, is to ask a question. And based on research, I might do it this way. Instead of saying, hey, we got the best training company in the world. We've been here 50 years. We've got sales training centers in 250 cities in the US and around the world, and we get excellent results. That's probably what that's probably what my competition is saying. So what if I started out my conversations? Did you know research shows from Salesforce that 83% of your sales team's not really satisfied with the progress of their career? So my eyebrows just went up. Did yours? They did. Yep, George's did. So a question based on some research, based on something you know how to fix. So think about that. That's one way to intrigue, by asking a question that's based on something you know that might intrigue your buyer. I can't tell you what it should be, but it should start out, did you know? Or do you know? Or have you seen? Or have you experienced? Questions, open-ended questions that you can't say, you really can't say too much yes or no to, that you start a conversation, more open-ended. And it's especially eyebrow raising. Let's try it one more time. Everybody raise their eyebrow. Yeah, see, your face changes, your attitude changes, your outlook changes. You're a lot more fun. You're going to be more popular. But if I wrinkle my forehead and kind of wrinkle my eyebrows, then it's like, I don't get it. What? Wait, what? So I'll close with this. Buyers who are confused or aren't clear, don't say yes. So our job is to be clear, direct, honest, transparent, a little bit bold, a little bit different, a little bit out of the comfort zone, break the pattern that your potential buyer is in when you reach out to them. A pattern interrupt, it's called, to change what they've been thinking about, what they've been doing, to what you'd like to talk about, even if it's just for a minute or two. And then finally, on your prospecting, I want you to think about, test this a little bit. You don't have to own this immediate. Test the idea of selling a conversation, not trying to sell your product in that minute or two that they're giving you. You're selling a conversation that you're gonna, if they're interested at all, probably gonna be interested in setting a time to go deeper so you can ask your questions, they can ask their questions. You can talk a little bit about some of the issues that they might be working, what's on their radar screen, and then see if what we do fits what they're trying to do. Then you've really got a prospecting mindset. And then I think when you feel that, then you also have a belief that you should be reaching out because you're a trusted advisor. And you go from peddler, nothing wrong with being a peddler. My dad was a peddler. I'm a peddler. But we go from that to being differentiating ourselves as trusted advisors, no matter what we're selling, advising and consulting. And if we can't help fix a problem, then there shouldn't be a sale. But if we can help, and mostly we can, right? Then that's giving us the energy and the attitude and the mindset that we should be prospecting, because it's going to be fun, because we're going to make a difference. So that's what I have for you today. My email is steve.cashdollar@sandler.com, and reach out anytime, ask questions, ask about other things we do. We have programs coming up every month that you can be invited to. We have a coaching program that people love now, where we can work with people either in an individual basis or on a group to help target our message and our coaching, teaching, mentoring to you. All those things, we should talk sometime. If you feel like you're the person who wants to improve your results, make them more predictable, more scalable, and have more fun with it. So thanks for joining me. Again, steve.cashdollar@sandler.com. George, thanks for helping me. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate you. See you next time.